Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Financial Wealth and Health Podcast. My name is Isabel Rothy, a certified financial planner and a financial advisor at Desert Wealth Management, as well as the host of this podcast. It's my goal to help families, retirees, and young couples work toward financial freedom. One of my favorite ways to talk about different financial concepts is by talking about the similarities between financial wealth and financial health. I truly believe that in order to become financially wealthy and financially free, you need to be financially healthy first. Let's grow our financial wealth and health together. In today's podcast episode, we're starting a series called Investing Basics. And in this part one of this series, we're talking about why we invest our money. I really wanted to have an investing education series on this podcast because so many people are worried about investing, they don't know about it, and thus they get worried about it and they don't want to take part in it. But investing your money, if done well, it can really benefit your life, and it's a very important tool that can really help you work towards your goals. And so my goal with this podcast series is to help people feel more educated about investing, because when you're more educated, you're a little bit more comfortable with it. Some people do investing all on their own. They're the DIY, do-it-yourself investors. Some people know how to invest their money and know about the basics, but they want to hire a professional, a financial advisor, to invest their money. So regardless of what kind of investor you are, I think it would greatly add to your life to learn a little bit more about investing your money, especially if you want to learn how to grow your wealth over time. And if you know anyone that wants to learn more about the basics of investing, please pass on this episode to them. Please share it with a friend or family member, as the more you know about investing, the more empowered and comfortable you are with it. So without further ado, let's dive into this first episode of the Investing Basics series here on the Financial Wealth and Health Podcast. So there are many reasons why people invest their money. I would say some of the most popular ones are, first, to grow your wealth and to work toward your financial and life goals. Second is to try to beat inflation. We'll talk all about inflation in a few moments. Third, I would say it's to have a passive income stream through dividends and interest on your investment. This isn't one of the top reasons. I think the first two I shared are two of the most popular, but passive income is definitely one of them. Another is to have tax benefits. So if you have a retirement account such as a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, or a employee-sponsored retirement plan account such as a 401k or a 403b, these are some investment accounts that can offer tax benefits to you. And then another reason is to have diversification when it comes to your income sources. So one example of this is your income sources in retirement. So let's say you're retired, you're 70 years old, you get a Social Security check every month, maybe you get a pension check. Those are two sources of income. Another source of income you could have is from your investment account, whether you receive interest and dividends and capital gains every month, or if you send yourself money from your retirement investment account every month. Either way, that investment account can be another income source for you in retirement. This is just one example of how investing your money can be an additional income source for you. We're talking about retirement right now, but there's many different ways that it can add income to your life. So those are the primary reasons why I see people invest their money. Of course, there's a multitude of reasons. The two that we'll be focusing on in today's podcast episode, though, are the first two I mentioned: to build your wealth and work toward your goals, and second, to try to beat inflation. So we'll dive into those two topics right now. So let's chat about growing your wealth and saving and investing your money to work towards your future and life goals. When I talk with people about financial planning and investing, I like to ask them what their values are in life and what their goals are. Some examples of common values include faith, family, love, purpose, health, achievement, creativity. There's so many different ones that people have, but I ask people what their values are in life, what matters most to them. And then I like to try to figure out what their goals are in life. We talk about their short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. I like to define a short-term goal as 1 to 3 years, a mid-term goal as 4 to 10 years, and a long-term goal as 11 plus years. So I ask them, what are your short, mid, and long-term goals? Do you want to buy a house in the next 3 years? Do you want to retire in 20 years or 10 years or 30 years, depending on how old they are? Do they want to pay off their mortgage before retirement? Do they want to travel the world before they get too old? Do they want to pay for their children's college education? Do they want to start a business? There's so many goals that people have, and I like to ask them, what are your values? What means the most to you? What are your goals? And then we like to assign a timeline to those goals. We like to look at their goals, assign a timeline, and once we have talked about their values, I can understand what goals line up with their values. So for example, let's say someone wants to buy their first home and they want to help pay for their children's college education. When I hear that that's their goal, it makes me think, okay, that probably lines up with their value of family. But maybe, for example, they absolutely love going on trips with friends. To me, that shows that they're assigning the value of friendship to that goal. So when you assign a value to a goal, it makes it much more tangible, and it makes it a lot easier to save and invest for that goal, because you're not just saving for that trip down the road. You're saving for that trip or saving for that home because it's lining up with a core value in your life. And so for those of you out there that maybe have a hard time saving your money or trying to find the discipline and motivation to save, try to link that goal with a core value in your life, because then it'll mean so much more to you, and you'll really be able to find a lot more motivation to save your money when you've lined it up with a core value in your life. And of course, saving money is so hard. I am not negating that fact, but from my own experience and working with clients, when you make a goal very important to you and link it to something specific in your life, it can really change the game on your mindset of saving and investing your money. So once you've understood your goal and you've attached a value to that goal, it's good to attach a timeline and a price tag. So like I said, I ask people, what's your short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals? The reason I ask them this is it's a timeline that helps me as their financial planner and investment advisor know how to invest that money. If they have a short-term goal, that'll change the way I structure their investment strategy. If they have a long-term goal, that also will shift the way I create their investment strategy. So when you have your timeline attached to your goal, that helps you, if you're doing your own investing or your financial advisor, know how to create that portfolio, because time really does play a role in how you create your investment portfolio. The longer amount of time that you have in the market, the more growth that investment can probably be, because it can withstand the volatility of being more growth focused. But the shorter term your goal is, the shorter term the investment account is, so to speak, that can mean that you have less time in the market, so you may not want to be as growth focused. Of course, that's specific for each investor, and this podcast episode is not intended as specific advice at all. It is merely educational and a resource. So keep that in mind. I always have to share that disclaimer, but that's just kind of an idea on how you could think about it in your own life when you're asking yourself these questions. And some people have such a short-term investment goal that maybe they should not invest their money in the market. Maybe it should just be in a savings account at their bank, or be in a high-yield savings account, depending on the dollar amount and the timeline and whatnot. So that's just added information for you to consider in your financial plan and investment strategy. But once you've defined your goals and you've assigned your values and your timeline to those goals, next, I think it's a good idea to put a price tag on those goals to really understand how much you need to save, how much you want your investments to grow to work toward that goal. So let's say you want to buy a house in 3 years and your down payment you want to put down is $80,000, okay? You know that's the price tag on that goal. Or maybe your child is 6 years old and you have 12 years to save for their college education, and you're trying to figure out, roughly how much money it'll cost per year of college and what scholarships they receive and all those details. If you have a price tag that you calculate for that college goal, for example, it could help you have a starting point on how much you should be saving every single month or every single quarter into that investment account, depending on how often you want to save that money for that college savings plan, for example. So once you define the price tag, that helps you really understand how to set up your budget to figure out how much money you want to save to each of your buckets, to college savings, as we said, or to your retirement accounts, or to your first-time homeowner account, or maybe you're trying to pay off your student loans. So that price tag really can guide you and figure out how to chop up that goal into monthly savings goals or quarterly savings goals or annual, whatever works for you. But I find that having the price tag on that goal can really keep you in line with your monthly saving and spending plan. Also, too, when you have that timeline on that goal, that kind of acts as a deadline for yourself. If you know you want to buy a house in 3 years, you have 3 years to save for that $80,000 down payment, for example. Or if you know your child will go to college in 20 years, that's your deadline. You have 20 years to save. So having that deadline can also help you really figure out how much to save periodically for those goals. So we've talked about one of the reasons we invest our money is to grow our wealth and to save for financial and life goals. Another reason is to try to beat inflation. Now, inflation has been a common topic that we've been talking about for the last couple years. I'm going to be sharing a chart. It's the CPI, the Consumer Price Index chart from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The chart that I'm looking at right now, it's actually up on the screen for those of you watching the video version of this podcast. I have the 12-month percentage change Consumer Price Index, selected categories, not seasonally adjusted chart. I know it's a long name, but as of April 2024, the CPI was 3.4%. Typically, the goal inflation rate of the Federal Reserve is around 2%. Sometimes this number changes of their goal amount, but historically and typically it's about 2%. So we're at about 3.4% for CPI. There's a couple different measures of inflation. This is a very common one. If we look at some history, in June 2022, when it was at its recent highest, it was at 9.1%. So we have made some great progress. We're still not right where the Federal Reserve 2% goal wants us to be, but we're about 3.4%. Well, what does inflation have to do with investing? If we don't invest our money loses purchasing power. Now there's high yield savings accounts which have a higher percentage of interest than a normal savings account, so that's nice. But as far as the average inflation rate of 2 or 3%, depending on who you ask, if you leave your money just in your bank account and it's not earning much interest, you're actually losing money because inflation is eating away at your money. So that's one of the reasons people do invest their money, is to try to beat inflation, to try to make more than where inflation is at. And of course, there's times where, as we looked at June 2022, inflation was at 9.1%. And now, as of April 2024, we're at about 3.4% looking at these CPI numbers. So we can't always beat inflation when it comes to investing, but investing over the long term is a way that investors do try to beat inflation and try to make more than what inflation is taking away from our purchasing power. So that's something where when you hear people say you can't afford not to invest, one of the biggest reasons they say this is because of inflation. So I hope that information about inflation was interesting. When I talk to my friends about investing, rarely ever does inflation come up, so I like to bring it up. But for those of you that are interested in investing and want to learn more, please stay tuned for part 2. Before I go today, I do want to share a couple things. Some people are really interested in investing and they think that they're ready, but sometimes people have a high interest debt that they're carrying, such as credit card debt, or maybe high interest consumer debt, like a car loan, any other type of consumer debt that they have, where it could be high interest and it may make sense for their financial plan to pay that off first before investing their money. Of course, that depends on the interest rate, how much money they have in savings, etc. So that doesn't apply to everyone, but it's something to look at in your financial plan of, do you have any high interest debt you're carrying that you may want to pay off first before you invest your money. Another part of your financial life to look at before you invest your money is seeing how much money you have in your emergency fund. Do you have 3 to 6 months of mandatory expenses saved up? If not, you may want to consider filling up that savings bucket first before you invest your money. Some people don't have a lot of money in emergency savings and they choose to invest their money. And when a big emergency comes up, sometimes they unfortunately have to take their money out of the market, sometimes at a loss, or they pay taxes on that money to pay off that emergency expense, where it may have made more sense for their financial plan to have that emergency fund set aside and not have to touch their investments to pay for the emergency. So as you're entering your investing education and you're considering investing your money, please take a look at those two things first, your emergency fund and your high interest debt. There are other areas in your life you could take a look at before you start investing, but those are the two popular ones that I always like to share with people just to check in their financial life to see where they're at. So I hope you all enjoyed today's podcast episode. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for listening. I'm super excited for next week's part 2 in this series. I hope you have a great week, and let's continue to grow our financial wealth and health together. The opinions voiced in this show are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. This material was created to provide accurate and reliable information on the subjects covered, but should not be regarded as a complete analysis of these subjects. It is not intended to provide specific legal, tax, or other professional advice. The services of an appropriate professional should be sought regarding your individual situation. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. LPL Financial and Desert Wealth Management do not provide tax or legal advice. Clients should consult with their personal tax and/or legal advisors regarding their circumstances. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA SIPC. Desert Wealth Management and LPL Financial are separate entities.